Tomorrow will be the final edition of the Rocky Mountain News.
For the last decade and a half, we've seen 1,800 newspapers disappear.
The Denver Post isn't dying. Alden Capital is murdering the Denver Post, and not only the Post, but papers from coast to coast.
I think we're facing an immense national tragedy if these newspapers go under.
They saddle the business with debt, they pay themselves first, then they strip them for their parts.
There are times in your life when you are thrust into a situation where are you going to stand up and risk everything, or are you going to back down?
The journalists themselves have finally realized, if we don't tell this story, who's going to tell it?
In the middle of covering one of the biggest stories in Colorado history, I've got a guy sending me a note asking me to cut some of the very people who are working on this story. I'm just not going to do it.
We got bought by this mysterious company, Alden Global Capital, and it was a New York hedge fund. We had layoffs pretty much every 6 months. And we started finding out this was happening all over the digital first media chain.
You get to a point where everything has been cut already, and yet here comes another fiscal year, and here comes yet another 20% profit demand.
I said, you're an investigative reporter. Why don't you dig into Alden and just write about who they are and what they're doing, because people don't know. All this stuff starts popping up. It's like, whoa, this is a little more than meets the eye. How many mansions does a guy need? They are literally stripping hundreds of millions of dollars from digital first media newspapers. One opinion page editor, a guy named Chuck Plunkett, just decided he'd had enough.
The Denver Post has launched a revolt against its owner, New York-based hedge fund Alden Global Capital.
The Sunday editorial pullout section of the Denver Post was an act of defiance and desperation.
It's either stand up and speak up now or write your own obituary in 2 or 3 years.
The Post's editorial page editor Chuck Plunkett writes, as vultures circle, the Denver Post must be saved.
It's one of the most courageous things I've ever witnessed in a 40-year career in journalism.
It was on the front page of the New York Times, above the fold. The Washington Post. It was covered in almost every national media outlet.
Our members are here today to deliver a very simple message to Smith and Freeman. Sell this company and get the hell out of the news business.
What Chuck Plunkett unleashed with that section was permission for journalists to raise their voices, to explain why journalism matters, and to warn the community that what would be lost would never be replaced.
The number one job of a journalist is to hold people in power accountable for the decisions they make.
It's not good enough to say it's going away because that's the way business works. Newspapers are not just any other business. They are the only private industry specifically named in the Bill of Rights.
People need to know there's a problem, and they need to know why it's happening. History will not judge us kindly. If one day we wake up to realize we failed to protect our community's right to know, and in turn, our very democracy.